Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Foxify Radio. We have got a very special guest today. I'm actually super excited. We've got Robert Doyle, who is also known as Crypto Sensei. How are you, Robert?
I'm good, Alice. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Good, thanks for coming. Do you get called Robert or Rob, or what do you go by?
So my mom calls me Rob or Robbie, and then my
Yeah,
friends call me whatever, Doyle, Robert, whatever.
whatever
And
they want.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, well, I've never really been one for nicknames, so I sometimes forget to ask if people want to go by their full names or what. But no, cool. Thanks for joining us.
thank
So for
you.
you, those of you that don't know Robert, he is quite well known in the crypto space. He is the CEO, I believe that's right, isn't it, of Cryptonairz?
Yeah, so founder of Cryptonairz, and we have a auditing company called DeFi Sentry as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that today, actually, as well. And then obviously you've got quite a following on Twitter and YouTube as well. So quite well known in a few different areas, actually.
A lot of different areas in crypto. I kind of bounce around whatever's hot, and so I try to get well educated on whatever the season is. So
Yeah, there's definitely seasons. That's one thing I learned really quickly. I've not been in crypto for probably anywhere near as long as you, but I learned very quickly that everything comes in what I call life cycles. Projects have life cycles, trends have life cycles. Bull and bear markets have life cycles. So everything's constantly evolving. I feel in this industry. So
you got
bit
to
of a
be
learning curve.
you got to be learning every day, or you'll fall behind. I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, live in California. I got into crypto about 4.5, 5 years ago. It's like right in between.
Yeah.
First got into crypto. My dad, my parent asked me to look into a cryptocurrency, and it was XRP. I spent the next 3 months on YouTube and everywhere else I could find information, and I got hooked in really hard. And I knew this technology was special and important, and I wanted to kind of teach people about the technology. And so I started educating my friends first, my close family second.
Yeah.
And it was pretty exhausting, right? Because you have to walk through a brand new person the same thing, right? How to set up a MetaMask, how to get KYC on
Yeah.
an exchange.
Yeah.
So that's the reason we kind of set up the Discord, so we can educate a bigger population, and a little bit easier too.
Yeah, absolutely. So what came sort of first? Was Cryptonairz the first thing, or was it like your Twitter or your YouTube?
No, so it was a group me first. We actually created a group me. So when I first got in crypto, I was kind of doing my own thing.
Yeah.
Eventually, I found a couple YouTubers. One of them his name's Bullzilla, and he's been in the space longer than I have. But I really liked his channel, and I liked the people in his channel, and so I kind of got well known in that channel. And then I created this group me, and a lot of people from that area kind of moved into the group me, and we kind of just were growing. And it's really hard to in a group me, it's like Telegram. There's like one place to put messages, and you can't really have different channels. And
Mm-hmm.
so things I would say would kind of get lost in everything else. And so I met another person, Grant, and we created the Discord. He built the Discord, and one thing led to another. We got really popular. In 2021, we had about 2,000 subscribers. Before the market crashed, we went into a bear market. But built out a great team. We have NFT people. We have traditional finance people actually in our community. So people that do stocks and stuff like that, mainly stocks. And so we have TA. We have a lot of different things in the community where people can just start coming and having a safe place to learn.
Yeah, no, super interesting. So you've obviously got, quite a following. You've got this big group. So it sounds like actually it all happened really organically for you, just through networking, just through putting in the effort.
Yeah, we got really lucky. I was kind of blown away about how many people were interested. And it kind of just the floodgates opened, and we were making a lot of money in 2021, and people wanted to understand what we were doing. So a lot of people joined up, and when the market crashed, anytime a bear market comes, a lot of people end up leaving the space, right, and then wanting to come back once they see greener candles. And I feel like that's the wrong time to leave. When you're in a bear market, that's when you need to be really educating yourself and understanding what the best technologies are, so you can maybe maybe invest in them, right? We obviously don't give financial advice. I've never said I'm a financial advisor. I don't claim to be, but I have a really good work ethic as far as researching and things like that. And people want to understand what's going on in crypto, so we provide a great service. And I spend probably 300 hours a month on research myself, not including my team. So I'm glued either to a screen, 14 hours a day, 12, 14 hours a day. I'm just researching, watching videos, reading PDFs, and trying to put all of that into chats so I can educate other people on what I'm understanding and what I'm reading.
Absolutely, absolutely. So do you feel like the bear market has had sort of a negative impact on Cryptonairz and DeFi Sentry, or?
Yeah, no, absolutely. When people aren't making money, and they might not see the value in paying, $50 a month or whatever it is they
Yeah.
want to, pay. So yeah, we lost a lot of members. There are still, several hundred that decided to stay, and a lot of the projects. Well, here, let me back up. So when the market went down and there wasn't a lot of money going into DeFi, I decided to, a lot of what we were doing was in DeFi. Like 90% of everything that we are doing is in DeFi. And I was like, well, this is not sustainable, because there's going to be projects that really don't have a lot of money to go into them right when they launch. And there's not going to be a lot of opportunities. So about February of 2022, I decided to move the education to utility. So I started educating people on, XRP, XLM, Quant, Casper, HBAR, all of those things, the blue chips, right? And we got into AI cryptos too, late last year. And a lot of those cryptos went crazy over the last like 45 days. So we've had, 500% gains, 200% gains, 100% gains. There's been a lot of green and a lot of happy people in the Discord the last couple of weeks. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, that's great. No, I keep reading everywhere. I don't have too much time to do too much research. So a lot of what I read comes from Twitter, which obviously can be a little bit unreliable. Yeah. But I see so much that AI is like the next big thing in crypto, and that's where your money should be going. And that is what's really going to boom this year, is like anything around AI.
Yeah. Well, when you have Microsoft giving, trying to buy out a portion, or they did buy out a portion of ChatGPT for 10 billion,
Wow.
You have a lot of uneducated people that are just jumping into whatever has an AI at the end of it. And so, a lot of those tokens pumped with people not understanding the real technology behind them, but just because they have AI in the name, people kind of FOMO'd. So there is going to be great opportunities, especially once we do get into the real bull market. I do think a lot of these cryptos are way undervalued, and there's going to be situations where people can take advantage of that. And so we'll educate them, but it's always up to them to decide what they want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what I know, obviously, no one can predict the future, right? So this is like just a bit of an opinion question. But when do you think the bull market's going to finish?
Well, the bear market will probably, we're in a little bit of a pump, right? And Bitcoin might go to 30,000, might not. It really kind of, the whole ecosystem kind of lives and dies with Bitcoin, right? And so, we're seeing what I think we're actually, the US and other countries are either in a recession already or about to go into a recession. When you look at like other macro things, credit card debt in the US is as high as it's been in like 40 years. People can't get loans from banks. And so a lot of people are late on cards and car payments and all this other stuff. And I think a lot of these banks, especially in the US, are over leveraged with debt. And so there's a real storm coming in front of us. And I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to that kind of stuff. And it's always a good idea. What I tell myself, like I said, I can't give financial advice. I always say, if I'm up 100% on something, I'm taking profits and waiting for the next opportunity, right? But I do think we're going to have a bear market Q2, Q3 into 2024. You're going to see probably a bull market start. I don't know when in 2024, but it probably won't happen until 2025 because of regulation and a bunch of other stuff that's happening around the world.
Yeah, God, regulation's massive at the minute, isn't it? Like with the whole BUSD situation, and we have two currencies backed by BUSD in the project that I'm a team sort of member of, and we always, we're preaching essentially that BUSD is super safe because it's backed, which is still true, but actually, these regulators are going to come after everybody, right? And thankfully, it won't impact our tokens per se, but it's still like a bit of a shock, I think, actually, when one of the stable, safer options suddenly has a big black mark over its head.
Yeah,
With
and
regulators.
you actually see Circle and Binance are fighting each other right now, right? Binance,
Yeah.
Circle is trying to show, cause for regulators to look into Binance, and Binance is, pointing fingers at Circle. And so, right now, this we're actually having this conversation in the community right now because, I always try to give my people a lot of time and notice before something bad might happen, right? Like last year with Celsius and FTX and all these other things, I saw them coming. And so I was able to let my community know several days in advance before either one of them went under, and they were able to draw their funds out. And so we're talking about that right now. And so, we're having the conversation of what is safe. And so, we're looking at, asset-backed stable coins right now. If Circle's not feeling very safe, and if Binance is not, BUSD is not feeling very safe, where do you put your money? Because Tether's definitely not safe, right?
No.
They've been trying to do an audit for, I don't know, since 2016 or something. And they've never finished an audit. So I really do think, staying away from Tether is probably the number one thing. But we'll have to see what happens with Binance and with Circle. But the United States is really kind of approaching this, regulation by enforcement the wrong way. You have all these other countries adopting the technology because they can see it's the future. And, you have the United States shooting themselves in the foot. So we might see a situation here where, a certain currency is considered a security in the United States, but all over the rest of the world, it's considered a commodity. And that's really the fight that's going on right now in Congress. And I've been trying to do everything I can to try to tweet at these people, email these, these Congress and Senate people to try to do anything I can. And I really try to talk on my channel about, having other people, write your congressperson or make a phone call. There's things that we can do as individuals that, people are really not doing, and they're sitting on their hands and they're hoping that somebody else is going to take the fight to them. And really it's not.
Yeah. You don't see the same level, I don't think, of like news and drama, for lack of a better word, in the UK around crypto, but you still get it. So for example, I think it was Nationwide, one of our main banks, said really recently that's it, they're banning all crypto withdrawals. And a few of the banks have already done that. So there's like literally, out of probably 10 mainstream banks, probably 2 or 3 of them you can access, Binance or Coinbase or crypto.com through. And I just find it baffling, actually, that it's considered okay to regulate what people do with their own money, right?
Yeah.
If you want to spend your money on anything that you want, as long as it's not harming anyone else, I don't really see how they can justify that. So I'm interested to see like where it goes, how these regulators, how the governments, and how they justify it, because I don't think it is.
Yeah, and you know what's weird? Like this year at the Super Bowl, since that's a big thing in the US, and I'm sure a lot of other places around the world watch it, but they didn't allow any kind of cryptocurrency commercials from because of everything that happened in 2022. But they'll be happy to show you gambling commercials, right?
Well, exactly, yeah.
You can go to the bank, take out all your money and go gamble it anywhere and everyone's fine. But if you want to, start using your money to maybe get into a situation to better your life, that's when, banks, institutions, and government want to keep you where you are. And it's really unfortunate, but, it's a lot easier to manage, your population when people are in a debt-based system and they really are living paycheck to paycheck, right? And that's really sad, but that's where they want to keep us, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I suppose a lot of it comes down to control, right? If you've got, the blockchain's anonymous, it's just linked to a code or, a wallet address. You can't, unless you're with a KYC platform, which you don't really have to be. There's so many options. You could move money round and round and round, and you're not paying your taxes necessarily on that. And, you could be making money and not actually withdrawing it all. And so the money that you would have made in, say, a standard investment and you would have had to pay taxes on because it's in the normal system, that's not happening so much. So for me, I think there's a big element of control to it, and the governments and the banks are a little bit nervous, perhaps, if crypto becomes more and more mainstream, what does that mean for that side of things?
Yeah. No, that's well said. And also, too, just to touch on that point that you brought up there, if you are registered on a centralized exchange, your KYC there, and you're using your MetaMask that nobody knows about, but if you're moving funds from your MetaMask to your centralized exchange, the government can figure that out, right? Because what I do think is going to happen here, and I think it's already starting, is I do think centralized exchanges, especially, are going to require to have some type of banking license and require to do, monthly audits. And there hopefully should be a third party from the government or whoever that goes in and verifies that, hey, the customer funds are in the customer's account. They're not using them to do anything nefarious. But you need to understand that they do have the technology to track that kind of stuff. And if you do send your money from your MetaMask to a centralized exchange, better not, they understand that that's your MetaMask. They'll put it back to you. And they're gonna try to tax this stuff. But the UK, I do think, is leaps and bounds further along on crypto regulation than the US is, because they see it as this fourth industrial revolution, this wave of new technology, and they want to be the hub for innovation. And the United States wants to ban it, right? Because they feel it's a threat to the dollar. And I can go on a rant about that, but you have the BRICS countries, which are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They're getting other countries to join them. Saudi Arabia is going to be joining the BRICS. Egypt, which is the largest country in Africa, is joining BRICS. They are working on digitizing, having an asset-backed currency, right? And so you have countries all over the world considering doing this. Like countries in Africa are going to make a common currency that they can trade in between them and stop using the US dollar. You have Brazil and Argentina working on a common currency. And so there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes that are threatening the US dollar. And I think this is their way of trying to stop what's coming, but you really can't, right? Because it's just technology, right? They're bad actors in every space, right? Especially when you haven't set the rules of the road in the space. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, but you really can't put it back in the box. It's here. You should just understand it, and learn to accept it and get educated on it. And then, figure out how to regulate it properly so everybody can participate and not have to, live in, because I mean, a lot of these companies live in fear, right? They go to the SEC and the SEC will put them through up to 100 different questions about their project, about their business. And if they see something they don't like, they bring an enforcement action. So they're asking projects and companies to come in and deal with them and talk with them. And then they're getting sued anyway. So it's a really back to front way that we're doing things here in America. And it's really sad to see.
Yeah, it's just so complicated, I think. Like you say, because different countries are approaching it really differently. I think actually, like, where the US is taking a much stricter and a much harsher stance on it, I think they're running quite a big risk, really, of falling massively behind. And actually, they're not going to stop people from using it. They're just going to find loopholes in the system and ways around it. So they're sort of shooting themselves in the foot a little bit, I think, in that situation.
You know what's funny? I mean, the Big Bang implementation of ISO is happening in March, the weekend through March 17th to March 20th.
Yeah.
And the Euro system called Target 2 is being upgraded to Target. And what that is a real-time gross settlement system, right? And so they can use, they're going to be using ISO messaging. And if they they could use something like Ripple's, on-demand liquidity to move that value at the speed of light. Bank of England just came out and said that they're going to be using Ripple technology, and they probably will be using ODL to move money. And that's the fourth central bank that's come out to say that they're working with Ripple, right? And so the FedNow payment system in America is supposed to be going live next month. The FedNow partnered with Volante. Volante uses has the opportunity to use Ripple through their VolPay system. So it's funny that they're out here trying to ban it for the retail investor, but institutionally they're adopting the technology themselves, which is really funny if you ask me.
Yeah, it's interesting, really interesting. Just going back to what you touched on about, tracking identities and remaining anonymous and stuff. So what's your take on the whole Tornado Cash situation?
So I think that people that are using smart contracts to develop software to use something where people could remain anonymous, I don't think that should be I don't think the people that created that should be arrested and thrown in jail. I think those are just, developers wanting to create a system that's free from, oversight from, the powers that be, right? Anytime you spend or ask or do something that's over $10,000 in the US, a little thing is filed on your account and it's flagged, and someone has to check that. And so I do think that we need these systems in the future. I do think as CBDCs roll out, right, over the world, that gives the government even more control over, what we're doing. They say they're not going to track what we're doing. They say they're not going to program money, right? Because that's what they can do, right? If they roll out something like UBI, Universal Basic Income, or if let's say somebody is out of a job and they are asking for money because they're looking for another job, but unemployment, excuse me, say someone's on unemployment, those funds are eventually going to be sent through a digital wallet and a digital dollar whenever that does happen over the next 2 years. And governments will be able to if they want to, they can program that money to only be spent on certain things, or maybe that they give you $1,000 and 800 of it needs to be spent in 1 month, and you can roll over 20% to next month. They can do all of that stuff if they so choose to. It's going to be really interesting to see what they decide to do about all of it, but it is coming no matter what they do.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge when you think about it like that, and you think about, I don't know, the next 2 to 5 years, and what this technology can bring and what it will change. It's like, yeah, it's actually pretty insane.
It is. It's incredible, and that's really why it's such an exciting time to be in the space. I know we've seen a lot of red over the last 12 months, but I mean, I can't tell you how much I've learned over the last 12 months and how much I've grown as an individual. And just to be able to, start educating people, right? I had somebody new come into the community that really didn't know a lot about crypto. She heard some things from her friend about our community. She came in, I think in like October. By December, she was teaching people at her dinner table, Christmas dinner. She was teaching her family about it. And so, that makes me feel really good. It means that, people are learning, they are growing, and they're going out and teaching other people. And if we get more people like that, maybe regulation comes a little sooner, but it does look like 2024 will be the year of regulation. You have the G20. India is the president of the G20 right now. They actually had a crypto a bill in cold storage that they just rolled out in the last meeting to get global regulation, right? Because digital assets are not a country to country thing. They're a global thing. And if you have different regulation, right, in different parts of the world, money and value cannot flow at the speed of light. If the US adopts something ridiculous and the UK and everybody else is on the same thing, then that's a real problem for the US. So I do think what the European Union is doing with their MiCA bill, which comes in 2024, is fantastic. It's a great start. I know the UK is working on their own type of regulation before that does come out. So I do think the UK is probably the place to be for most crypto projects, but a lot of them are heading to places like the UAE in the free zone. They've got 500 crypto startups right now, and they want more. So it's just going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I do think the power shift is going to move from the United States over to places like the UAE, because they know the technology is here to stay, and they're doing everything they can to get as many good companies as possible before other states or countries wake up and decide to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we're based in the UK, and actually, when it came to looking into like best places to register, the UK wasn't top of the list at all.
Sure.
We've looked everywhere, like UAE being one. I think Cayman Islands was another one, and there was a few others.
Switzerland, maybe.
Yeah, possibly. I don't work on like the legal team, so don't quote me.
We're all good.
But yeah, basically everywhere. Obviously, it's certainly not the US, but not the UK either.
UK is like, I think number one, or I think, oh God, I was looking at this a couple of weeks ago. I think they're either one or two in the world for popularity for people, for projects to build. I think what you're getting to is you're getting a lot of companies that are American companies, and they're like, you know what, I don't want to deal with what's happening in the US right now. And I think the closest thing that they feel is that's not the US might be the UK, right? Where, people still speak English. I know in the UK, you guys have a whole different language and a whole different, different words for things. My mom's English, so I grew up with that. And so I always teased her about different words that she would say. But to get back to it, I do think the UK understands how important it is. They're also changing laws to do with TradeFi, right? Changing laws for digital documentation for trade. And that's really important. They're working, I think, with ICC standards. I can't remember. I think it's ICC, but they're one of the biggest. They're a company that goes out and tries to help with laws in other parts of the world to set up different regiments for regulation on certain things. But the UK is really taking charge with digitizing documents and changing the laws so that's possible, and that's going to save countless trees, countless hours, and it really will help the flow of goods all over the world, because I do think other countries will adopt the same regulation once the UK sets something in.
Yeah, I do think there's loads of things that the UK is really forward in. Even something really silly, like one of the things the UK gets praised for all the time, which is really random, is the government website. It is supposedly like the most informative, but like the most easy to use versus other like governments. Obviously, I don't ever really routinely look at other government websites to compare, but that's something I've heard a few times. Just the simplicity of it.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you need simplicity, right? And that's what I think, you're not seeing as fast of an adoption of crypto currently, because it's hard, right? You really have to start understanding how to do all of these things if you want to participate in the ecosystems. And by making things easier to not onload, but to get new people to start using the technology, that's really important. So I think you're getting that shift now of banks, institutions, and companies trying to develop different tools and apps to make things easier. So people don't even realize that they're using blockchain, but they are, right? And so that's what you're seeing really build out all over the world: healthcare, travel, all these different industries. Supply chain tracking is really important.
Yeah,
but
massive,
yeah,
massive.
it's all being built out.
Yeah, definitely. I think actually that's one misconception, and I might have said it on a previous podcast, but I say it all the time. But one thing that blows my mind, and I forget all the time, is how much like non-crypto people hate crypto, and I feel like they tend to put blockchain in the same sort of bracket, even though blockchain has like so many uses. Actually, it's just a ledger, it's a spreadsheet, it's just data, and actually the use case for it is basically unlimited, right? You
Yep.
can use nearly everything. And this hate towards blockchain, just because it's associated with some of this meme coins and the rug pulls, especially that you've seen in the last 12 months, it gives blockchain a bit of an unfair rap, I think, really.
Well, and all the bad actors, right? I mean, last year in 2022, what you had: Three Arrows Capital, BlockFi, Celsius, FTX, Luna, just to name a few, right? And those had nothing to do with technology. Those really were, bad actors behind the scenes trying to manipulate different things, for their gain. And I think that, countries like ours, the US, are using bad actors as a way to regulate or over-regulate a growing space that needs nourishment. It needs help to thrive and to innovate, right? And I do think it's a slippery slope that we're going down right now. And it frustrates me, because you hear Congress people talking about Silk Road, and people use crypto for illicit things, but let's be honest, people use the US dollar for way more illicit things than crypto could ever do, right? And so I don't see anything going on, or nobody talking about that, right? So most of the world's $100 bills are not in the US, they're everywhere else. So there's a lot more crime, there's a lot more bad actors using US dollars than using crypto. And I just think the focus has really been on crypto. It's really sad. It's really sad. And I think where we could have been, if we understood how important the technology was 2 or 3 years ago, and set proper rules and guidance for companies to grow. I mean, we could have been, way further down the line with advancement in this space. But it's just really sad, Alice.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like you said about the $100 bills, actually, if you think about it, cash is a much bigger risk than crypto or digital currency or anything that's actually on the blockchain, on a ledger, visible. I went to a shop recently and I wanted to pay card, and they were like, "Oh, we only take cash." So I had to go to a cash point. I know, go and get cash out, which I never carry cash. It was like I even had my card on me, to be honest. Normally I just use my phone, like Frapple Pay. And so I went and got cash out, paid, like went back to the shop, paid the guy, and he just like stuck it in a little box under the till. Like there was no register of what he was doing. You know, you're telling me anyone can trace or know what they're doing with that money or where it came from? Like,
it sounds like that guy was running a little bit of a thing inside of that shop, right? It's like, oh, the systems are all broken. Put the cash in my little box here. I swear the owner
it was a nail shop, and I think they're quite well known for being possibly not always legit, but no option for card whatsoever. Like I say, and the thing is, they didn't tell you that before you went in. So I'd gone in, I'd had my nails done, and then he's like, oh, cash only. And like I said, it's really like just by chance I had my bank card. I'm a nightmare. Like I lose everything. So I never carry my bank card. The amount of new bank cards I have to order is just ridiculous. So I did use my phone because I don't lose that. And by chance I had my bank card, luckily. Otherwise, I don't know what they'd have done because I wouldn't have been able to pay, and they didn't like pre-warn me. So
we might not be doing this little chat right now. If that's the case, they might have had a place in the back of the shop for people that don't have cash on them, right?
Yeah,
you're gonna work in the back until you paid off your nails. So.
You'd have been sat in the stream waiting for me.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's wild out there. So crypto and DeFi, it's like your full-time job. It's your full-time thing now. Yeah.
I have a real estate license. I used to do real estate before I found crypto. I've been in sales my whole life. I actually started selling cars when I was 18 in Hawaii. I spent about 10 years in Hawaii. That was a great time. And so I learned a bunch of skills. And then I was like, well, I'm never going to be able to make the money I want to make selling cars or being a manager in a store. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll go sell real estate. And I'm like, man, I want to make more money. So what am I going to do? And so I started looking for other ways to make more money. And, one thing led to another. I found crypto, and, we did a really good job in 2021 about providing really good information, and people made a lot of money. And so, I was like, this is where I need to be. And since then, it's all I do is just understand what the newest and best technologies are, learn as much as I can about them. And there's information coming out daily in different parts of the world, but you have to look for it, right? And a big thing about it is, the one thing we can't get back is time, right? We don't have enough time in life, right? You have a job, you have friends, you have family, you have hobbies, and you don't have 10, 12 hours a day to sit and just track news, but I do. And so I give two chats a week to my community. They're usually about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes long. They're long chats, but we go through 100 different pieces of news in crypto over that past 3 or 4 days, and then I'll load up another 100 pieces of news, and we'll just go through it. And the people that show up to every one of my chats are pretty dangerous. They know a lot of things. 99.9% of people don't understand half of this stuff, but a lot of people that show up to my chats really do. And that's where we're making money right now, and a lot of these blue chips that have been pumping and different AI cryptos.
Cool. It's funny that you say you started in sales. Actually, on the podcast that will go live before this one, I was having a chat with a lady called Katie, and she runs her own sort of wellness business. And she started in sales, and I started in sales, and Danny, our CEO, started in sales. And what we were saying actually is, no one as a child ever is like, do you know what? I'm going to grow up and be a salesman. That's not what someone ever aspires to be, right?
Yep.
I feel like the skills that you learn in sales are invaluable. I think they set you up so well for like moving on to starting your own business, or being an entrepreneur, or working your way up the ranks if you want to stay within something a bit more corporate. And I feel like actually these sales skills are so underrated.
Well said. And you're absolutely right. Especially in today, right? When I went to high school where everyone started to have cell phones, but not everybody had cell phones, and we didn't have smartphones. It was still kind of like the Nokia and flips. But as younger people are developing these days, a lot of things that they don't have are people skills, right? Understanding, being able to sit there, put the phone down, and speak to someone and understand what their worries are, what they're thinking, and being able to ask good pointing questions so you can identify how, if you can help this person, or maybe maybe they're not there exactly for what you do, but you get them the right help. It's several different things that you learn, like you said, that really kind of help you develop into the adult or human that you are. And if you don't have those skills, life might be a little bit harder for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a friend. She's actually my sister-in-law, and she works teaching, and she teaches 16 to 18-year-olds mostly. And she said all of the lads, they don't have like a plan. They don't have a plan. They just want to be passive income, Andrew Tate, TikTok, and there are so many of them, and they don't. I feel like because of technology and because of social media, what young people learn and what they know and what they want from their life now is, so different. And I'm 31. I'm not like crazy old, but I feel like even in like those sort of 10 years or so much has changed. Like so much has changed. It's crazy.
And that's the shit part about being where we are, right? TikTok is a Chinese app, right? But they don't allow TikTok in China,
No
and
way. That's
you
so
start to think about
crazy.
that, right? Well, it's kind of a way to um, uneducate the new generation of people coming up in your country, right? Because you're right, people want to be YouTubers, they want to be TikTok stars, but they don't want to be doctors, or they don't want to be engineers, right? Or salespeople, right? They just want to be in front of a screen 24/7, and they live by likes and clicks, and that's really not going to get them very far, unless one out of a million blow up, right? I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of people that don't make it, and those are the people that are going to have a harder ride in life.
Yeah. Well, everyone can't be an influencer, right?
True.
Influencers are influencers because they've got a bigger following. If everyone's on the same level and everybody's an influencer, then actually no one's really an influencer.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
I don't even consider myself an influencer. I just consider myself as a guy that loves this technology, and I want to
yeah.
share it with people, right? I always tell people in my chats, right? I've given you some information here, but it still is, you need to go do your research, and I'm just kind of pointing you in the right direction of things that are happening, but it's really on you to take the next steps. And I think in the last 2 years, I don't know, I've done hundreds of AMAs, and I've dealt with, I don't know, 800 or 900 projects, right? Because we were dealing with, 100 projects a month at one point. It was kind of crazy.
Mhm.
And, you'd get people offering money to, hey, we'll give you 15% of whatever your community invests. And as soon as somebody says something like that to me, I'm like, you can't come in for an AMA, because any serious project is never going to give you, that type of money. And so, I think a lot of people they see an easy dollar and they go for it. But once you take that money and you start, you're really not doing that because you think this is a good project, or this is good technology. You're doing that because you got paid. And I think once you take that money, you're really not able to, let's say you take the money from the project on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday they're doing something shady. Are you gonna say something about it, or are you gonna feel like, oh, they just gave me money, I can't say anything? And so I don't ever want to be in that position. I want to be able to speak my mind, and call out a spade when I see it. And I've called out a few people for doing some shady stuff, and I have no regrets over it. But there is a slippery slope with influencers, and that's why I always say, I'm just a guy that likes crypto, and I like teaching people about it. That's it.
Yeah, I think in this market, it's been like the bear market for a while now. I feel like there's been a massive shift in influencers, in the way people blindly promote projects.
Yeah.
Like, so we launched, and then it was about a week after we launched was the big Terra Luna scandal. So we launched at like the worst time, and it was interesting to watch how quickly, like, the people that would previously want to work with us and do AMAs, and it was nothing we'd done. Our project is still, doing well today despite the conditions of the market, but they'd suddenly change their tune and they'd pivot, and they were like, actually, I never said that I worked with DeFi. I hate DeFi. Don't invest in DeFi. And you saw this huge change because people, I think, were almost scared of it now because of, the crashes and the bad actors. And there were quite a few for quite a while. I mean, I remember one project, I won't name names. You might likely will know which one I'm talking about, but there was a massive marketing push for this project, and I don't think any of the people in it were particularly bad actors, but I think they probably, they wanted to make money for themselves rather than for their investors. And they did this massive marketing push, and they partnered with loads of these projects, and like you said, they said they'd give a cut of the pre-sale to these projects. And in my head, the maths never made sense. How can you give away this much, promise this much, a 2x or a 3x, whatever it was on launch, but you haven't even got the money to put in the liquidity because you've given it all to your projects that you were signing up to be affiliates, right?
Yeah.
And sure enough, this project failed within literally, I think it was within about 10 days. It was actually monumentally quick. I was quite surprised, but I feel like one good thing, hopefully, to come out of the bear market is that investors, I think, are a little bit maybe smarter to these sort of situations now. Yeah. When I was new in DeFi, I wouldn't have really read the white paper, for example, in that much detail and scrutinized the maths and the percentages and the allocations. I would have just thought, oh, do you know what? This will probably pump and I'll try and make some money out of it. And I think actually you've seen a lot of personal responsibility in investors, I think, since projects like that, where they looked back and they thought, actually, if I'd looked into this, I could have seen it wasn't going to work out.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Alice. That's why I made the pivot to move away from DeFi in early 2022, because the quality of projects that were coming out right around then, or right when all that stuff was happening, were very bad, right? And you just if you're in the space for a long time and you've seen enough of these projects, right? Let me ask you this. Since your project launch, right? How many other DeFi projects are still here since you guys launched? I bet you could probably count them on a hand. Like how many projects launched the same time you did or around there?
Probably not even a hand.
Exactly, right. And so I understood those numbers. I understood that math, right? In a full bull market, you could throw anything at just crap and make money, but in a bear market, you can't, right? And there's not enough liquidity to pump those projects. And so there was decisions to be made. And I think some of the people that stayed and kept pumping these DeFi projects out to their audience, I think a lot of people caught on and were turned off by that, right? Because really, when you're talking about DeFi projects, some of them don't make it even a month or 3 months because there's a contract issue, there's an issue with the team, and it's a really tough market, right? And if it doesn't have utility, like if you can't answer the question, like what's the utility here and who's going to use this, how is this going to change the world, that's probably a project you shouldn't be putting money into, right? That's probably something that you should go and find something that is going to change the world and get into that, because that'll have a much better outcome over the next couple of years than you just losing money on every DeFi project.
Yeah, absolutely. And since, being on the other side of a project, so actually being on the team and seeing the way things should be ran, because, not to blow our own trumpet, I think that's one thing we've always got really right is, the way we run things, the way we manage it. And I think a big difference in where we came into it was we looked at it like a business. We didn't look at it like, some code that might make us some money. And I feel like oftentimes you'll see developers run projects, and some developers have got the management skills and they would make great CEOs, but just because you can write code, it doesn't automatically mean that you can run a project. They're very different things,
Well
and
said.
actually, so since being on a team, I don't think I've really invested in anything DeFi. I could probably name on one hand less even, just because my expectations of project teams went from like 10 to 100, it just jumped up massively. And yeah, I look back at like pre-project to me and I was like, I can't believe I thought I was going to make money out of some of this stuff.
Well, it's part of a learning curve too, right? You were in a situation where you had a real team trying to solve a real problem, right? And 99% of other projects, they're just there to make money, right? They're just there to open something that looks like a legitimate project, rug the project, and there's no consequences, right? I can't tell you how many projects rugged people and none of them face consequences. And that goes back to having proper rules of the road and different things. I do think as we get regulation, I think certain projects, companies that want to build are going to have to get some type of licensing, right, to really show that they're a legitimate, viable product or whatever it is. And I think those little things like that could really help separate the bad actors from the good, right? Because if you have to take some extra steps to go into I don't know, a building, a government, I don't want to say a government building, but you understand, like, to get a license, to show, you might have to have a white paper that someone has to go through. There's just so many things you could do to help protect investors that are very small, but it could have a huge impact. But instead we don't do anything, and we just leave the floodgates open, and we point fingers when it's done. And that's really where we're at right now. And there's, we're not getting anywhere, especially in my country. But there are some places like your country that they are doing what they need to do. And I do think I do think we're gonna go into a situation where you're gonna have tiers of projects. You're gonna have like an A tier, you're gonna have a B tier, and then you're gonna have something else. And so I think an A tier is something that like central banks and institutions are going to use. A B tier might be something that has good utility, but might not be used by Fortune 500 companies. Something like it could be like a DeFi project, but I do think they're going to separate projects into tiers. And I do think once all this stuff happens, you're going to go from 22,000 crypto projects to maybe like 1,500 or 1,000 pretty quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think where you've got like these bad actors and, like you say, people pointing fingers or what have you, I feel like it sort of creates this cycle, right? And it's a bit like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Because you've got this situation where people won't dox, and then it's like, oh, you won't dox because you're a bad actor. But actually, even legit people won't dox because they're nervous of like the repercussions or the finger pointing that they might get, even if they've got the absolute best intentions.
Yeah, and that, I'm glad you said that, because that's true, right? There are some really good there's some really good actors out there in the space that are scared, right? Because you've seen, even on a good project that maybe had a contract issue that maybe the devs didn't see, or maybe had something that happened after they launched, it's still a legitimate team and a good thing. But if the price goes down, people want to send you death threats. And so I think it goes back to not having proper rules and understanding of different things. And I think there are different ways to protect builders and protect investors, but you have to find like a happy median for that. And I think until then, we're just going to experience the same thing we have been. But I do see light at the end of the tunnel. I do think we're going to get where we need to go. And I think the certain cryptos that make it through all of this, I think those are the ones that are going to make people a lot of money in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll keep knocking my mic. I'm not used to having it.
You get a wireless one, like, and put it on your, like, in your shirt right there.
I could, yeah. I considered getting like a headset one.
Yeah.
But for some reason, my house, like, the audio quality seems terrible. So it sounds okay when like we're chatting, and then on the recording, it's just, yeah, it's just and stuff. But there are obviously softwares that I could probably use to improve that. So yeah, I just wish I would stop whacking it with my hand. It's really distracting.
It's all good. Just don't beat up your microphone too bad, okay? You're gonna need.
I'll try not to. I have to buy a new one in a minute.
Yeah, there you go. You're gonna have boxes of mics just laid out. It's gonna be a graveyard over there.
You can make like a trophy of broken microphones.
Yeah.
Just here.
Yeah, that could be on the wall behind you. This is what happens when you make me upset. I break my mics.
Yes, exactly. So tell us a bit more about DeFi Sentry.
Okay, yeah. So we launched an audit company. We were dealing with so many projects at one time. And we were really one of the only communities that were asking to see the smart contract. And we had code auditors on the team that would look at those smart contracts before we let the team in. And I think you probably remember that when we were dealing with your project. But that was an extra layer of security that we put on. What was that?
So I was saying, it's just easily the most intense process for any AMA that I booked in.
Well,
hundreds and hundreds, and none of them were as thorough as you guys. Not even close, not even a little bit.
But that was for a reason though, and because no matter how many projects you deal with, there's always going to be some that slip through.
Mhm.
Even if we look at smart contracts, there's things that happens with smart contracts. Maybe the smart contract's perfect, but the dev leaves and he can't do anything, or somebody management leaves, or something happens, right? So you're never going to be able to get 100%. But if you put a couple roadblocks in, once you ask for the smart contract, a lot of the bad actors are like, well, hey, this is not going to work, right? But very few kind of got through, and we were able to protect our community from a lot of bad things. And we would make a joke about it, right? Because we would have a list of projects that would come in, and then we would track them if they rugged, and we would have a certain percent of how many projects rugged. And like 1 month, I think it was November of 2022, we had 130 projects that came in November, and only about 18 of them made it to AMAs. And the rest of them are all gone now. And so, that really did help us keep the community safe, because that was our main goal and focus. How can we keep these people safe? And those are two things that did that. And so we had this great process of looking at smart contracts, and the team that looked at those, and we're like, well, why don't we open an audit company? We already have the process. We're already talking with these projects. And so we did that. We built a website. We built out some things on MythX, which that's some of the software they use to scan the smart contract and find errors and different things. And so we launched the company about 4 months ago, 3-4 months ago. We've done about 6 or 7 audits, and we have some coming in, but the market is slow right now. And there's a lot of great companies out there. And so it was just kind of one of those add-on things that we have to offer projects that are coming in that aren't audited, and say, hey, do you guys want to go through an audit? We're going to look at this anyways. We could audit the contract while we're doing that. And it was just one of those things that kind of fit the business model. So, things have been going good, and we hope to see brighter futures for the business as the market comes back, when it does. And we got a lot of great people that we are working with. The BioFi team, we've been dealing with their team for a while now, and they're doing all kinds of really cool biometrics. They're making a cell phone that's an actual node that you can, while you're sleeping, that could be mining crypto or validating transactions. And so there's a lot of cool things on the horizon, and we're kind of treading water, waiting for the market to turn green again fully. And we're excited to see where the future holds for both companies.
Yeah, no, it makes absolute sense. Like you say, you already, essentially during that process anyway. Why not, add it on? And because it's not the core of your business, you don't need to worry if the market's a bit quiet, because you've still got Cryptonairz and these investor, what do you call it, investor group, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, keep going. My bad.
I was to say, where people obviously are coming to you guys for education, and education is needed in every market. So
yeah. And the proper education too, right? It's one thing to tell people something, but it's one thing to break things down piece by piece and making sure people understand, right? I'm always trying to say, hey, are you guys understanding what I'm talking about here? Do I need to go into something a little bit deeper? I was talking about bail-ins. I was talking about bail-ins on Wednesday. It was only 2 days ago. Wow. I don't know, your audience probably doesn't know this, but if you have money in a bank in Europe, or you have money in a bank in the US, if those banks should become insolvent, they can freeze your account and take some of your assets. And it's a huge thing. And Cyprus was the first test of a bail-in. And so, the bank froze customer funds and took a portion of people's money to bail out the bank, or bail in the bank. And so there's different laws in the UK, and there's different laws in America. But the governments, if big banks, systemically important banks, should fail, the regular retail people are the ones that are going to be bailing those people out. So, if this is the first time you're hearing about bail-ins, let's say you're in the United States, you want to look at something called the Dodd-Frank Act, DODD. And that'll kind of break down the bail-in process. And it's really kind of scary where we're heading. We're all in this fiat system. Nothing's backing up our currency. We just keep printing money to infinity. Sooner or later, that system's going to break. Banks are way over leveraged on money that they let borrow. If you go deposit money in your bank account, your bank can take your money, the money that you deposited, because now that's the bank's money. Of course, you have your credit in your account, but the bank can take your money and go loan that to somebody else. And in America, there's $19 trillion in deposits. And end of 2021, the FDIC only had about $110 billion. So that means if everyone went to the bank tomorrow and try to get their money out, or if there's something that happened with the banks, the FDIC won't be bailing anybody out, really. And it's a scary thing to think about. But I'm trying to get more people to talk about this. I've actually been tweeting out a lot about this last several weeks and months, and I'm seeing more influencers talking about bail-ins. And there's a woman named Molly Elmore. She does a YouTube channel and Twitter. She did a great video on bail-ins. And if you want, look up bail-ins and Molly Elmore. You will love that video. But it really does open your eyes to maybe what dystopian outcome will come in the future, and we got to be prepared for everything.
Yeah, it's wild. It's absolutely wild. But I think you're seeing, and obviously on a much smaller scale, but certainly in the UK, and I think the US is in a relatively similar situation, whereby, and a lot of this is, due to numerous factors, right? You've got obviously the pandemic, the Russia-Ukraine situation. I feel like there's loads of things that are contributing to this. But we're in a situation where the banks and the government, they've printed so much money that the inflation's just shot up. Like, I think it was like 10% something. Bless you. Was that a sneeze? Bless you.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me. I'm like,
yeah, but inflation, I think it's, the highest it's been in such a long time. And
40 years.
Yeah, printing money doesn't get you out of that situation. It just makes it worse. Like here in the UK, so during the pandemic, the government gave out so much money. They gave out money to people already on what are called universal credit here, which is low income people. So they boosted that up. There was business grants. There was like all of these things. They even did something, and I think it must have been, I think it was August 2020, and they did this big campaign, and it was Eat Out to Help Out. So what they basically did was encourage everybody to go and eat out, so go out for lunch, go out for dinner, because everyone was still really scared of going out because of the pandemic, getting ill and whatever. And so everyone would go out and they'd give you, I think it was something like 10% towards your bill. Like it wasn't massive, but I feel like what people forget, or people maybe didn't realize, is that's not really 10% they're giving you. It's just 10% that they're going to take from you somewhere else. That money needs to be made from somewhere. They can't just print it. If they keep printing it, then taxes need to go up because they need to meet inflation elsewhere. Do because the cost of living has then jumped up. And I feel like it's a massive misunderstanding of loads of people, particularly, like I say, I don't know the exact situation in the US. I think from the news it's relatively similar. People they don't realize that this money doesn't come from the air. It's either borrowed from somewhere, or they're taxing you higher, or it has to be repaid somehow, and that is the normal person. And whether that's in these, I've never heard of a bail-in, by the way, so I will go and research that, because that's pretty terrifying.
I'll send you the video. I'll send you the video you should watch. All right.
Yeah, you should. Yes, whether it's in the form of a bail-in with the bank, or whether it's through the government and actually they're increasing your taxes, and it might be in places you don't even really realize. Like it could be not necessarily income tax, but they could be putting tax up on certain products, or they're taxing things that even as far down the supply chain as import, and then that cost then goes into the price of the product, because it needs to be paid somehow. And in my opinion, that's nearly always the consumer, right?
No, you're so right. Yeah, we did have super similar things to what you're talking about. People that were unemployed got more money. Businesses were able to apply for millions of dollars if they had the right employees, and people were abusing the money, right? They would get $1 million and they would go buy Pokemon cards or whatever. And so there was so much abuse in our country for all that. I think they printed like $3 to $5 trillion. I think it was like 3 trillion. It was a lot of money.
That's
But
crazy.
that goes to the entire world, though. We're all in this debt-based system. And when we were talking about this earlier is, places in like Africa are going to an asset-backed currency. The United States, Nixon jumped off the gold-backed standard in 71. And so for 52 years, we've been riding this train of being able to just print money. And, it started in the early 2000s and we just went crazy. And what's happening is, there's a lot of corporations and there's a lot of rich people that don't pay their fair share of taxes. And our country, we just, what the president passed a bill to hire 87,000 new IRS agents. Those are the people who, go look at your taxes over 10 years, right? And so there's a lot of people retiring. And so there's one side of our government that are trying to, take that bill away. And so, those agents won't be hired and those, nothing will be looked into. And, the spending is out of control, and they don't do anything to make up the money that they're spending. And so we are in this debt spiral now. And that's where things like the Great Reset come into play, where you're going to wake up one day, the stock market will be frozen, the bond market will be frozen, derivatives, everything will be frozen, bank accounts will be frozen, and they're going to move to this new digital system. And that's where they'll come with UBI, Universal Basic Income, and all this stuff. But the more that I'm educating myself on what's happening around me and around the world, this is a real possibility that we're looking at. And there's no fix for $30 trillion, right? The interest on the money by itself is almost what we're allowed to spend in a year, on the entire country. I think the interest is like $2 trillion and we bring in 5 trillion and we're spending like 8 or 9 trillion. So it's out of control. And, there are some things that could fix this, but they are going to be, some wild ideas, and you never know. There's something like it. See what the banks can do. The banks have been buying, central banks have been buying level records of gold all over the world. They haven't bought this much gold in 50 to 60 years. And there's a reason for that. We're going back to an asset-backed system. And to do that, there's going to be some reset of the system. And I don't know what happens to everybody's accounts or your bank account or your stocks or whatever, but there is a new system that's being built or that has been built, and it's going to be interesting. But the way that I set myself up is I think this is going to happen. So what digital assets can I own that will be used in this new system? That's how I'm thinking about it, right? If this system does happen, there's some assets that will explode in value because those assets will be needed to provide liquidity to the system. And, something like XRP, Ripple covers 90% of all payout markets in the world now. They're talking with up to 50 central banks. I think there's like 78 central banks in the world. So people are like, XRP, has no use case. And I say, hogwash, what else is going to be used to move money around the planet? And when you ask somebody that question, it's not going to be Bitcoin, right? To move money from a bank to a bank, you have to have KYC and AML, know your customer, and anti-money laundering. Those are like 2 minimum things that you need. And since Bitcoin really doesn't have a company behind it, or there's nothing that can make it compliant to do so, banks won't use it. So the only people that will be pumping Bitcoin are retail speculators. When you look at Bitcoin, the majority of Bitcoin holders, like average people, own like 0.2, 0.5 Bitcoin, right? It's not 1 Bitcoin or 2 Bitcoin. The majority of people own less than 1 Bitcoin. And there's only so many billionaires at the top that have been saying Bitcoin's the future, Bitcoin's great, buy Bitcoin, and so I can get more rich. But at the end of the day, you have to say, well, is Bitcoin going to be used like that? And the answer is no, it really won't. And it's too slow. And if 10% of the world decided to use the Bitcoin network, it would require the entire energy supply of the entire planet just to run the Bitcoin network. So there's no really big future for Bitcoin. I do see some bad things happening as far as regulation against Bitcoin mining and things like that could put a stop to it. But people need to understand that Bitcoin really doesn't have utility. It's a store of value for the people that believe in it. And if the people stop believing in it, well, it's a store of value of nothing.
Yeah, that's like, it's just such an interesting conversation. I feel like, and it almost goes back to like the influencer conversation a little bit, but I feel like you see all of these big like crypto influencers, and they are just pushing Bitcoin like no tomorrow, right? It's buy Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the currency of the future. And actually to see someone go against the grain and actually have, you know, legit reason and, you know, explanation for why you have a different opinion to that. I think it's, you know, it's really important. I feel like it's so easy, particularly because most crypto investors, and, you know, I probably fall into this category, to be fair, aren't anywhere near as educated as they should be. They don't understand the system as much as they should. And so they'll look at these people and these influencers, and they're promoting Bitcoin so much that they will think, actually, that's where I should put all of my money. And you're right, no utility, no actual like, no company or no legit backing or people behind it.
Yeah.
You know, banks aren't going to touch that, are they? You know, banks aren't going to touch that. You know,
They won't be able to.
do that.
Yeah, they won't be able to, Alice. And you know, I do think Bitcoin's going to go to like 100K, 150K in the next bull run, right? Because, you know, there isn't regulation, and I don't think banks, or I don't think elites and governments have set their sights on it yet. But, you know, there might come a time where it is. But, you know, what I tell people is this: when I meet new people off the street and we just start talking about random stuff and they mention crypto, and I'm like, oh, I know a few things. So you know, I'm like, well, what do you hold? And like, oh, I hold, you know, half a Bitcoin or one Bitcoin. And, you know, they don't really have money to buy anything else. And I'm like, okay, well, where do you see Bitcoin going? Or why do you hold it? And, you know, those two questions, you know, people are like, oh, I hold it because my friend told me about it. Or, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. And it's like, well, you know, you could take that, you know, one Bitcoin's 25 grand right now. How much other crypto or utility crypto could you buy for 25 grand, right? You could buy 50,000 XRP. You could buy, you know, 250 or 300,000 XLM. You could buy, I don't even know how much XDC. There's so many other things that have not even exploded yet that you could put that money into. And instead of seeing a 3X or a 4X in the next bull market, you might see something like 100X or 1,000X if that utility starts being used. And you know, that's where we really start the conversation of, you know, you got to understand what you're investing in. If you don't understand it, don't invest in it. You know, learn about it first. And then if you still think it's a good idea after you've done your due diligence, then it's your life. Do what you want. But I think people really need to take a hard look in the mirror and understand that Bitcoin doesn't have a use case. You know, it's a store of value. That's the only use case. And that's really it. And so, does it have a future? We're going to find out, you know, but there are some things that really will do crazy numbers, and those things have not gone crazy yet. And, you know, you still have time to learn. It's not like you missed it. A lot of people think, oh, it's already happened. I've missed it. It hasn't happened yet, guys. We haven't moved to that digital system yet. We're close. Now is a good time to start learning, so you're ready for what happens.
Yeah, definitely. I saw a wild prediction the other day, and it wasn't just like a random Twitter. It was actually on, you know, one of the crypto news sites, and it was some, I can't remember who it was, but some big crypto person. I can't remember the life of me remember who it was, like some thought leader, and they'd come out and they'd said they think in like 5 years' time, Bitcoin will be worth 10 million.
Anytime someone says something like that, ask them what the market cap of Bitcoin would need to be for it to do that.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's like crazy predictions. And I remember I was, you know, trying to diversify a little bit. I think it was probably late last year when Bitcoin was at a real low. I think it's when it hit around 15. And I was going to, you know, put a load of money into Bitcoin, and I decided not to. Obviously not financial advice, just to be clear. But I decided not to, because I was like, do you know what? The potential for growth on this is not as big actually as people make it out to be. And there are other, like you say, you know, more promising or more use case currencies that I decided actually were much better place to put my investments. You know, I always had this thing that if Bitcoin dropped as low as 15, I would just buy as much as I possibly could. I would liquidate other things and I would buy as much as I could. And when it came down to it, actually I didn't. I've changed my mind, because I thought about it. I was like, actually, this isn't the right thing to do right now. For me at least. Obviously some people will have done that and they'll be happy they did, because it's, you know, a lot higher now than it was then. But yeah, I decided not to.
So real quick, just to go back to these numbers, right? When somebody says something outrageous like 10 million, uh, quick follow-up question. What is the market cap of Bitcoin at 10 million? And the market cap of Bitcoin, you know how much money would need to go into Bitcoin for that to happen? Like over 20, 30 trillion dollars, right?
Wow.
And I don't think there's enough money to make Bitcoin that even much, right? So what you got to understand is when you're looking at something like the XRP ledger, right? What people don't get is this. You actually are going to start putting everything onto the blockchain, right? The bond market, the stock market, the derivatives market is like a $1 quadrillion market, right? All of the value of that is going to be digitized and brought onto blockchains, right? And when you're able to bring outside value like real estate, like gold, like silver, commodities, palladium, whatever it is, all of those things will be digitized and the value will live on certain blockchains. And those are the blockchains that you want to own because worldwide there's $326 trillion in real estate. The derivatives market is anywhere from 600 trillion to $1 quadrillion. Stock market is, give or take, 10, 15, 20 trillion. Bond market is 100 trillion. All of this money is going to go either on something like XRP, XLM, XDC, Algorand, HBAR. That's where the value is going to live. And that is what is going to make these prices on these tokens go astronomical eventually because the value comes onto the ledger. And let's say you're a bank and you're issuing credit to somebody, right? Someone wants to go buy $1 million home, right? The value is going to be on the blockchain, right? So the $1 million loan that person's going to take out by their home, they're going to be paying on it, but the value will live on the blockchain. And that will mean $1 million extra will go onto that blockchain because that's where the value lives. And you can't do that with Bitcoin. You can't run smart contracts on Bitcoin. Or maybe you could, but the whole thing would crash because it's so slow and costly. So nobody's building on it, right? There is Strike on Bitcoin, which is you can send money from person to person in a minute or two or whatever for $1 or $2. But why would anybody use that when you can use XRP or XLM and send it for a penny or 2 pennies, right? So anybody that says, Bitcoin could eventually go to like 500,000 or 1 million, but 10 million, there's not enough money on the planet to get to Bitcoin that high. Personally, that's my belief.
Yeah, no, and it makes perfect sense. Yeah, I read it, and I like I say, I'm not as educated in this space as I should be at all. But even I was like, that is just wild, like with my limited knowledge and
Yeah.
the limited time I have to put into the research and stuff. And I was like, even I know as like a relatively novice investor when it comes to some of like the blue chip sort of stuff and the top 10, top 20s. And I was just like, that just seems wild, absolutely wild. Like you say, is there even enough money in the world to facilitate that?
So check it out. Right now, Bitcoin's at 25 grand. Let's say it's right under, and the market cap is just under 500 trillion. Right? Or no, is it 500 billion? Excuse me. I apologize. So if we doubled the Bitcoin market cap, it would take it to 50K and we'd be at $1 trillion, right? So to get to where he was talking about as 10 million, right? It's going to take it would need to double and do a 20x just to get to $1 trillion. So you're talking about $20 trillion to be at 1 million. So to get to 10 million, you would need $200 trillion to get to that market cap.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the only way really, if that was to happen, it would be because of inflation, right? So actually your 10 million wouldn't be worth 10 million anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to bash Bitcoin, but I'm just trying to open people's eyes to other possibilities that,
Yeah.
Bitcoin was the first network built, right? It's like, I don't know if you remember this, but, before Spotify and YouTube and all this stuff, there was something called Napster. And you used to go on Napster and hopefully you would download a song. Sometimes it was a virus, but, you would use Napster to download music. And then there was, infringement rights and all these other things that happened. And Napster's not here anymore. But you have other companies that were built afterwards that, understood the rules, that understood that, hey, anytime someone listens to a song, an artist needs to get a small piece of it, right? And those companies evolved and built out. Bitcoin was the first, right? Then you had Ethereum was rushed because it needed to compete. Hopefully, they wanted to beat XRP and Ripple and all these other things to the market. Ethereum's not even a really good working ecosystem, right? I was trying to do a transaction yesterday. It was going to cost me $49 to transfer
Yeah,
$16.
it's
Uh,
crazy. It's crazy. I was trying to mint a free NFT,
how
and it
much?
was a pass for a game. Like, I think it was for one of our community members, and it was like the Bored Ape Yacht Club and the Mutinate Yacht Club. This game they were running, and he was like, "Oh, please, like, can you mint it for me? Because I know you own one of these NFTs, and I want to play the game." So I was like, "Yeah, sure, no worries." Thinking, yeah, it's not going to cost me anything. And then the gas was something like $60, and I was like, what, like $60 to mint a free NFT? And it wasn't even like, you know, some nice NFT. It was literally like a game pass, like a rubbish JPEG of a ticket, like $60 or something it was. I was just, oh my goodness.
But see what you understand when you're talking about utility that the whole world can use, right? I think we get, we're in, maybe a little bit more developed countries, and we have maybe a little bit of disposable income to, $25 maybe is not a lot, but $25 to somebody in like El Salvador or some places in Africa is a lot of money. And so they are not going to be able to use this network to do anything on. And so, that is not a working network for the entire globe. And, to be able to be a working network for the globe, you have to be able to do transactions for little to no cost. And, Bitcoin's not it. Ethereum is not it, but there are a lot of really solid solutions that people are building, like Solana, like Avalanche. Polygon's a great project to get into. It's a layer 2. There's just a lot of other things that have way more utility, way more value. And those are the really things you should be learning about, other than, talking shit about Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think a lot of people hold those two because they see those two on top and they think those are the best. And they just get in randomly and they just don't want to learn. And, when you start taking responsibility for what you're investing in, you start to learn. That's really when you start, magic starts to happen, and your investments start to grow, and you start to grow as an individual. And that's where you really can make a change in your life.
Yeah, completely agree. And like you say, Bitcoin or Ethereum, they're available globally, right? And if someone in one of the countries where, the cost of living and everything's a lot less and the wages are a lot less, because of that, they're not going to spend $60 to mint a free NFT.
Yeah. And that sounded like a good day at $60. Sometimes they're even higher, right?
I couldn't believe it. Like, I don't deal with Ethereum. I don't really like Ethereum as a chain. So I avoid it really. So when I was doing this, I was just shocked. So shocked. I was like, I didn't even realize that gas fees could be so high.
Oh, you probably were doing this on proof of stake. When it was proof of work before, I'd have transactions that were like $200, and then they would fail, and then you'd have to run it again, and hopefully that would work. It really is. I think it's a shit network. I know there's a lot of things built out on Ethereum, but I mean, in the long run, I think there are other chains that understand they're much cheaper to build on, right? Certain NFT projects, they don't have a ton of money, right? And sometimes to launch a project on Ethereum could cost $1,500 or $2,000. You can launch the same project on like Solana or something like it, near protocol, anything like that, for $500 or $400. And so you really need to think, like, on a global scale, are regular people going to be able to use these type of networks? I do think Ethereum will be around, in 10 years, but I don't think it'll be as popular as it is now. I just think people don't have as many choices, and over the next couple of years, I think people, that's all they'll have is choice, and that's really what gives a driving market to competitiveness. And if they can't get their fees under control, it's going to get worse. And I was watching something the other day that it was talking about, Ethereum's, proof of stake. And if so many tokens are staked, that fees could even go even higher than they are now. And I just don't see it a working network if fees get too out of control like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've launched a couple of NFT projects, and I sort of manage that. So I work really closely with the designer on the artwork and stuff. And it took such a long time to sort of explain and for her to get that actually we weren't going to launch on Ethereum, because obviously they had a bit of a monopoly over NFTs for quite a while, and in her head, because every project she knew and she'd worked on previously had, you know, launched on Ethereum, she was a bit like, oh, hang on a minute. And we actually launched on Binance, which was, you know, quite a unique choice for an NFT, but it's cheap, it's accessible, and you know, it's not the best network ever, but you know, it certainly does the job, and it's easy for, you know, non-seasoned investors, shall we say, to use. But yeah, she just couldn't believe that we weren't launching on Ethereum. And I think actually since then, like that was nearly a year ago now, I think since then you're seeing more and more projects looking, I think particularly like Polygon, like you said, I think that's a massive growing network. I think, you know, you'll see big things from Polygon in the next sort of year or two.
Do you know about Casper and upgradable smart contracts?
No.
So Casper is one of my top 5 cryptos, my top 5 picks. They actually are doing a 25 million NFT mint. They partnered with IPWE, and IPWE is a company that holds patents for people. Like if you create something cool and you have a patent for it, they're digitizing 25 million patents and bringing it onto the Casper network. And so that is really incredible. And you can have mutable or immutable smart contracts. And so corporations love it because, you know, often you build out a service, right, for something, right, and it can have blockchain behind it doing all of this stuff. And you know, down the line, if something happens and you need to upgrade that service, you know, using something like Ethereum or whatever else, you were not going to be able to upgrade the smart contract. But with Casper Labs, you can go back in and upgrade the smart contract. So that's a really incredible network that's really growing in popularity right now, and it's super undervalued. And so, you know, that's the really cool stuff I like to learn about, you know, newer technologies, right? Being able to upgrade smart contracts is an incredible thing. I think it would help out a lot of projects that, you know, launched and they're like, oh crap, we screwed up something on the smart contract. Now we have to relaunch a whole new contract, airdrop all of these people, and all of that costs money. With Casper, you can just upgrade it. So there are really cool technologies still being created, and all people have to do is look for them, and it's pretty fun. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that, you know, that would solve so many problems for projects. You know, the amount of projects I've seen, and they've got V2 literally the day after launch, and V3 and V4, and you know, some projects even start calling them, you know, V3.1 because they don't want version 4 to come out, you know, because they just have to keep updating stuff, and it's an absolute pain to relaunch a project. Obviously, having to like airdrop everyone, like with the project that I market for, we have like staking and farming and liquidity providers, and if we had to relaunch, I think I'd quit, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It's such a massive job. Like I just can't even comprehend how big of a job that would be.
You're like, I can't do it. I'm out of here, guys. Sorry.
No, I don't even do the tech stuff. Like, I'm a marketer. Just to make that clear, I don't know anything about code really. I can like look at a code really basically and figure a few things out. But yeah, just I know how difficult it would be for the team. Like it would just be horrendous, to be honest. And then from a marketing point of view, trying to manage that communication as well.
Yeah.
All the liquidity and stuff, I'd have to be like trying to encourage people, come on, please pull your liquidity because we've got to swap everything over. And yeah, it'd be a nightmare from a PR point of view, to be honest.
What's hard about that too? You know, people often buy into something and then they don't follow what's happening, right? Because say you're in 10 or 12 projects, it's hard to understand what's going on with all 12 of them. And when they launch V2, and if you don't move over your tokens, you lose all of your money and your value. And so it really is a nascent market that's being developed. And I do think, you know, as we get into 2024 and 2025, you're going to have a lot more new solutions and things will be streamlined a little bit better. And I really think people are going to wake up one day and are using blockchain and they're not even going to know it. And that's when you know that, you know, the technology is here to stay is when you can do that. And so it's going to be exciting to see that stuff happen. And, you know, all you got to do is wait for it at this point and try to make your right bets on things. And, you know, hopefully your life is better in a couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We are running well over time, which is great, to be fair. It's been a great chat. But I do have one last question for you, bit off topic. It's what I'm asking everyone at the end of a podcast, just something a little bit more personal. So who would you say your top 3 inspirations are? Anyone.
Inspirations?
Yeah, anyone. Can be family, celebrity, someone from history. I don't know. Who has inspired you the most? 3 people.
I'd have to say my mom. My mom. I mean, it'd be kind of sad to say my mom and my dad, huh? But they've always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. They stood by me as a good parent would. But I've done a lot of crazy stuff in my life, and if I woke up one day and they weren't there to support me, I'd understand. But they've everything I've ever done in my life, they've been there and supportive, even when I've made radical changes in my life. And even when I've called them, 2 days before I was getting married to say I'm getting married, they came, and my dad had invited from Hawaii in that day. And so, I've made a lot of crazy decisions, but they've stayed by me. I like a lot of history stuff. I don't know if there's somebody I could I want to say someone cool, but I really don't have a good answer for that. I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, it's a tough question, isn't it? On the surface, it seems quite easy, but when you think about it, it's actually really difficult.
You know who I really like though in the crypto space? I like someone like Brad Garlinghouse. He's out there taking the fight to the regulators. They could have settled this case themselves a year ago if they wanted to, but they wouldn't have had the clarity in what they wanted to for the space. And I really respect Brad. And there's some other people in the XRP community, like Jeremy Hogan is an attorney who spent the last 2 years going through all these documents and helping people understand it. I really look up to people like that. Just giving their time. I know their time is precious and expensive, but they're giving their time to help people and help people grow in their knowledge. So, other than my parents, I really look up to people like that in the space.
Yeah, no, great answers. I think, parents they're rocks, right? They're unmatched, I think, in that support that you can get. So absolutely agree with that.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great. It's been probably the most detailed podcast episode so far, to be fair. So I feel like our audience will like it. So
Thank you, audience.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.